Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here to cover some Christmas movies. It Takes Two Takes. I'm Andrew, this is Adam. We thought in the spirit of the holidays, we'd just do a brief little video just talking about some Christmas movies that we've enjoyed or that we enjoy to this day, some of our top favorites, just to get us in the spirit, right? Adam, you've picked out two or three movies. I've picked out several movies myself. We'll just kind of run down the list, talk about what they mean to us, and hopefully, for those of you watching, it's something that you can connect with, maybe something that you relate to about what we talk about. Again, just to get us thinking about some films that are great to watch around this time of year.
Yeah, I mean it's one of the ways to kind of get into the Christmas spirit, right? Is to start hitting those great Christmas movies. Those things that are classics. Now they could be things that we grew up watching, things that just we enjoy the most, whatever the case may be. Um, but yeah, those things that just kind of get us in the Christmas spirit.
Well,
So what is your what's the first movie you want to bring up?
I'm going to start with what I consider to be a modern day classic for me. So there are plenty of films I grew up with, watching childhood, that some of these I'm going to mention as a kid, as a teenager, what have you. But to me, the more modern one that I'm going to pick in this list is the movie Bad Santa. A bit not traditional, I understand. It's certainly a Christmas movie, but it may not be anyone's top three, let's say, right?
It's in my brother's top three. I'm pretty sure because every year he talks about that movie. So I'm pretty sure you're in company with him on that one.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Bad Santa is, first of all, it's when it came out in 2003, it's kind of one of a kind in that it is probably the darkest and funniest in that combination for adult humor sensibilities, R rated. It threw me off. And you got to remember too, in the early 2000s, like even sort of the Gen X or millennial sort of era, you still had a lot of people cherry picking off of the traditional understanding of Christmas, which was sort of the sort of Dickens philosophy of storytelling. Now, Bad Santa in its own way is kind of still following that template, but it just rips out everything of, we're not doing the nuclear family of the 80s and 90s. We're not doing the full redemption of somebody in those traditional films that we've seen over the years. And they just completely went for it. And for that, I had a ton of respect for it, and I still do to this day. And I watch it every year.
Oh, God! So you like to give little kids black eyes, huh?
And I just laugh my ass off. Billy Bob Thornton, the cast is phenomenal. The late John Ray was the last full length feature film he was involved in before he passed away. You've got Bernie Mac, also the late Bernie Mac,
And pull your damn pants up. What's wrong with you kids these days?
in this film, of course. And there is just, even to this day, I don't know that anyone's quite hit that mark. There's certainly been people that have tried since then, and to me, that makes it a good film. I mean, that makes it a something that will have an enduring legacy because there have been attempts at R-rated Christmas comedies since, and some better than others. There have been attempts at more adult humored Christmas movies since this to try to capture what it accomplished, and there's just nothing like it. Bad Santa to me is my entry sort of into adulthood and looking at a film that goes, oh, I can identify with this one that just came out, and it just got me at the right time, I think.
I'll agree with you. There's definitely been other Christmas movies that have tried to get that adult humor type of Christmas story, and I think Bad Santa does do it best. As far as pulling it off. I was a little disappointed in the sequel, but the first one is solid. I mean, there was a lot of unexpected the first time you're watching it. The mom from Gilmore Girls, got a Santa fetish.
Fuck you, Santa. Fuck you, Santa. Fuck you, Santa. Fuck you, Santa.
I thought that was hilarious. I wish she had been in the sequel. I think for me, if I'm going, I guess in this case, modern is relative for me. In this case, my most modern of my Christmas classics I'm going to bring up is actually a remake. And anyone who knows me knows I'm generally not in favor of remakes. But the movie Scrooged with Bill Murray was just a really interesting, fun way of retelling the classic Dickens, Christmas Carol story. You know, it had a modern feel. It had some great comedy to it. The cast in it, amazing. You know, Bill Murray, Karen Allen, John Glover, Bobcat Goldthwait, which he was hilarious in it, playing the guy who gets fired, and we see his whole arc of how far rock bottom does he go before he gets to a point of getting a shotgun to kill Bill Murray. Carol Kane, the ghost of Christmas Present, when she just keeps beating the hell out of Bill Murray with that, like, you know, hitting him with a toaster and just smacking him and kicking him in the nuts.
I like the rough stuff, don't you think?
Robert Mitchum, great classic actor playing Bill Murray's boss. You know, you had so many great actors that was, I mean, Bill Murray's brother is even in this, playing his brother. It was such a good retelling of that tale in a new way that was just, it was a lot of fun.
I don't hear any partying in that boat, Elliot. Great! You heard him party! Now why wasn't I invited?
Now that was just an innocent window, and you saw what I did to that. I don't, you know, who you're dealing with.
Honestly, sitting beginning to end, Scrooge, not cable, you know, being re-aired there, I probably didn't sit and watch it in its entirety properly until I was, I mean, probably in the last 10 years, 10 years ago, give or take, right? So in a way, I never quite connected with it like everyone. I appreciated it when I watched it, and I should watch it again, obviously, but it was one of those things that somehow it just got past me over the years, be able to sit from beginning to end and watch it. And it's one of my, like, I love Bill Murray. I just don't know why.
Oh my gosh. Does that suck?
I've never considered it a tradition for me, or at least tried to push that. I mean, like Groundhog Day on Groundhog Day is more of a tradition for Bill Murray films than Scrooge on Christmas. And I don't know that that's right, or it should be, you know, but I should rewatch that movie.
I care! We're indivisible. If I'm working late, you gotta work late. If you can't work late, I can't work late. If I can't work late, I can't work late!
Yeah, for me, there's just so many great moments in it. You know, there's the part where they've got a network censor who is saying that the Rockette outfit can't be on TV because you can see her nipples, and you know, Bill Murray's like,
I want to see her nipples.
But this is a Christmas show.
Well, Charles Dickens would have wanted to see her nipples then.
you know, or the fact that his boss wants to start programming for cats because apparently a lot of cats and dogs are watching TV now.
We should start programming right now. Within 20 years, they could become steady viewers.
Programming for cats.
I mean, it was just, there was so many off the wall stuff in this that was just fantastic for me. So I enjoy it. Carol Kane is probably one of my favorite characters in that movie. When she shows up and she's just slapping him, punching him, hitting him, knocking him downstairs. It's fantastic. At least for me. All right, your next pick.
So we got Scrooge. I'm going with, and honestly, if I'm not truly ranking these, but I'm gonna go. If I had to pick honest in a way, a number one. I know this is the second one I'm gonna mention. I'm gonna mention three, but my number one to me, right place, right time, right era, is absolutely Home Alone. I don't know that it'll ever change. There's just something to be said for the fact that, you know, John Hughes spoke to a generation of kids in the 80s, especially. And my sort of foray into his films was in the early 90s with Home Alone. I was, you know, just a year or two younger than Kevin McAllister was supposed to be when he was in this film. And to me, that was my, you know, I lived vicariously through him in that movie. And I will never not feel that Christmas to me is that movie. So when we talk about Christmas movies, it defines the holidays to me. It just, again, right place, right time. You've got, I think people forget how incredible that movie is in the fact that it even was made the way it was. The fact that John Williams even did music for that movie is absurd to me looking back on it as an adult. You kind of just took it for granted at the time, but the fact that it came together the way that it did, John Hughes still really at the top of his game. He's brilliant at writing for young characters. And you had Christopher Columbus, who was brilliant at directing young actors, and it all coming together. The fact that, I mean, if you, in hindsight, the fact that you got John Candy.
There he was. Apparently he was there alone all day with a corpse. Now, he was okay, you know. After 6-7 weeks.
To basically take bare minimum, like to be in that film and execute the way that he did. The fact that Joe Pesci is in this movie. I mean, like, again, at that time, you took it for granted. Looking back and that, you know, his entire catalog of work, you're like, how did that happen? And all the, you know, production pitfalls. I mean, we won't get into it, but it's a miracle that that movie came out the way that it did. In that moment, as a kid, though, I was consumed with it. I mean, if 80s kids, you know, were looking at A Christmas Story as sort of their movie, which, by the way, I love it, almost made my list. It absolutely is a fantastic Christmas movie. Home Alone was sort of that next, again, sort of the nuclear family, that kind of spin-off of Christmas Vacation and that sort of era of just dysfunction that was happening in Christmas movies. And it just hit that mark, and it helped me appreciate those other movies as I got older and I could relate to what was going on during that time frame. So Home Alone it's a staple. It will be played in my house year after year. My kids will watch it year after year. It's going to be mandatory.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
Yeah, the original Home Alone to me is no one will ever convince me otherwise that it's not among, if not the best Christmas movie for me and my generation, of course.
So the next movie I'm going to put on is going to be on my list. You know, I'll put it my number 2 slot, I guess, is going to be Miracle on 34th Street, the classic one, the 1947 one, not the one in the 90s, the actual classic 1947 with Edmund Gwenn, John Payne, Maureen O'Hara, Natalie Wood. That to me is just fantastic. That is watched that's watched every Thanksgiving. The movie starts with the Macy's Day Parade. And so it's the great, you know, kind of like starter to the Christmas season of movies for me. I don't watch any Christmas movies before Thanksgiving. And that's the first one I watch. And that's because it starts at Thanksgiving. And for me, that is a every year classic for me. It's just done so well. You know, Gwen did such a great job of being, you know, Santa, Kris Kringle, and there's such great innocence to it. There was just so much goodwill in that movie. You know, Maureen O'Hara did a great job as the mom who's just doubting, who's trying to teach her daughter that, you know, Santa doesn't exist. It's all make-believe. You know, John Payne playing Fred, who is, you know, trying to get Natalie Wood to believe in all this fairy tale make-believe stuff. And at the same time, he ends up being the lawyer when Santa Claus is put on trial and does a great job of someone that you know, you truly believe thinks Kris Kringle is Kris Kringle, or at least wants to believe.
Faith is believing in things when common sense tells you not to. Don't you see? It's not just Kris that's on trial. It's everything he stands for. It's kindness and joy and love and all the other intangibles. I
think it's just such a great classic that still, watching it today, fantastic. Every single time I watch it, I still love it.
It is a classic to me. I grew up watching that movie before I ever was in a theater watching Home Alone, before I was obviously watching Bad Santa. You know, my great-grandmother and my grandmother, you know, that sort of post-World War II era generation, they latched on to a number of classic films, and that was one that was on repeat at their house. So I absolutely love that movie.
And I love the way that ends, you know, because you're trying to, you know, when you're in there watching, like, how in a court of law are you going to prove that this old guy is Kris Kringle? And ultimately, you know, because the judge was in a position of,
you go on back in there and tell him that you rule there's no Santa Claus. Go on. But if you do, remember this. You can count on getting just 2 votes, your own and that district attorney's out there.
But at the same time, how do you say there is a Santa Claus if you're a judge? And so to have basically, you know, the post office delivers all these letters and says, this is Santa Claus, gave him exactly the cover he needed to go, well, if the post office is going to say you're Santa Claus, then I can't argue it. And ultimately, in the end, you're left thinking, maybe he really is Santa Claus. Maybe he really is Kris Kringle. When the house that Natalie Wood wanted, that, you know, Santa can't give you a house for Christmas, but managed to arrange that house happened to be for sale, and they drive by it on Christmas Day, and his cane is sitting there.
Oh, no, it can't be. It must have been left here by the people that moved out.
Maybe. Maybe I didn't do such a wonderful thing after all.
And ultimately, in the end, you're left wondering, maybe he really is Kris Kringle. So I really enjoyed that. Next movie.
Yeah. So, a bit of a wild card. In fact, I'm going to say I might be cheating a bit because it's not a full-length feature film. So I was like, what's the one thing that every year I watch without realizing it, every year I consider to be sort of part of my roots of Christmas? And Rudolph would have been one of them. But it ultimately ended up being, which again wasn't a theatrical release, it was a 20 to 30 minute release of Mickey's Christmas Carol. But let me explain briefly. It's not going to be super interesting, and I know I'm selling this really well, but for those of you that love Mickey's Christmas Carol, let me speak to you for a moment here. That movie came out the release of Mickey's Christmas Carol was in 1983. And it kind of had its run. There were home movie versions. The version that I had was sort of the VHS rip, which had multiple Disney shorts from years prior. You all know what I'm talking about. Pluto, the Christmas tree, and you had Donald Duck, and he was fighting his nephews out in the snow forts. There was a lot going on. But ultimately, Mickey's Christmas Carol, to me, it's important to me because, one, I became consumed with animation because of Disney, of course, but also because it was those sort of outlier things that Disney was doing that you happen to have just constantly on repeat on, again, VHS tapes that were recording things off of things that were being aired on network television. And this was one of them. I burned that tape out watching Mickey's Christmas Carol. And it was my first exposure to any sort of Charles Dickens story directly that was sort of an adaptation. So the values, the sort of message that was coming from that original story that so many people have adapted. We talked about Scrooge. We talked about sort of the parallels that go on with, even It's a Wonderful Life and those typical template sort of things that we saw in that post-World War II area of Hollywood that told us what Christmas meant. That was the Dickens philosophy. This, to me, was my core exposure to that. So the value of Christmas, the obsession with animation that I had as a kid and even as an adult, but also it was just a very good adaptation for as short as it was with the characters that they ultimately used. And it sort of brought and introduced me to a lot of characters that I ended up enjoying in years to come. Like Scrooge McDuck, yes, he had a history prior to 1983, but the one that we saw in that DuckTales era and everything past that began really with that sort of short, let's call it, or feature sort of short. So it's very important to me. I watch it every year. I have my kids, they've already watched it, I don't know, a half dozen times at least, because I push it upon them. But it's important because we went and saw the live adaptation of A Christmas Carol. That was kind of for all ages. And my kids understood the major beats because of Mickey's Christmas Carol. It's very consumable and it's very, very well done. And it's in an era that to me was sort of pre-Disney revival era where they didn't quite know what they were doing with their properties. And for better or worse, they were trying to execute something. And this was one of those things where there's kind of outlier that sort of got a little bit of a cult following over the years. And it's just important to me. So that, to me, again, bit of a wild card is I'm throwing it in the mix. I kind of have to. I wouldn't be talking about any of these other movies if it weren't for that.
Yeah, that wasn't anywhere on my list.
I wouldn't expect it to be on on yours especially. But yeah, no, anybody's really.
I've seen it. It's definitely something I have seen, but
Adam, you were like smoking cigarettes at a legal age by the time that came out, I'm sure. I mean, I don't even.
So I've got no context on that one. So, I definitely understand the childhood animation and, having kind of that drawback to your childhood to remember. But yeah, I've got zero thoughts on that one.
I know. It's I wouldn't call it a mic drop moment. I would just simply call it a
Merry Christmas, Bob.
And God blesses everyone.
Let's turn it to your mic moment.
All right, my final one I'm going to bring up is a classic I saw at a young age. So anyone who knows me knows I love classic films, and it doesn't matter if we're talking black and white, or we're talking color. It doesn't matter even if it's silent or a talkie. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that my parents, growing up, we had one TV in the living room. If they wanted to watch it, we were watching it. And this was one of those classics for them that they watched every year. And since it was on the TV, it kind of got ingrained in me as well. And as I started to appreciate film and the actors more, it definitely got cemented more and more as a regular every year classic for me. And for me, that's White Christmas with Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, Rosemary Clooney, Vera Ellen. That to me is a every year watch it type of thing. And I was watching that before I really knew who. I mean, I had heard of Bing Crosby probably, but I didn't know Danny Kaye. But later on, as I dive more into his catalog, he's one of my favorite classic actors at this point. And Rosemary Clooney, in case the last name people recognizing, that is the aunt of George Clooney. So, there was some great actors, great talent. It's not the first time you hear the song White Christmas in a film. That was done by a previous Bing Crosby film called Holiday Inn with Fred Astaire. But it being the title, it absolutely, and it's sung twice in the film, at the very beginning, at the very end. It's a really fun, comedy musical. And for me, that is every year, watch it automatically every year. My parents watch it every year as well. It's still a regular classic for them. But yeah, that one has to do with just, it became my parents were watching it. It was on the TV. I watched it, and it just hooked me in the long run. So it is absolutely one of my every year gotta watch holiday classics.
Real holiday old man, wherever he wants to go, long as he wants to go, opposite to the foe. We'll stay with the old man wherever he wants to stay, long as he stays away from the battle's fray.
Totally understand that one. It was on a lot. It was on around the house a lot when I was growing up, but I always I never it's weird, like Sound of Music. I could tell you every beat of that movie, and I watched it in the same time frame during that era. And White Christmas, I know the major, the moments where there are musical numbers, but everything in between, it's just foggy to me. I've rewatched it since then, but my point being that it clearly, unlike It's a Wonderful Life, Miracle on 34th Street, I don't know that of the sort of classic Hollywood era, I don't know that it ever was a huge staple for me. So I respect it. I think it's absolutely a top tier Christmas film. But for some reason, it just never it wasn't a tradition around my house, and I don't know why.
What's one of the great things of this movie is there's one scene where Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye go to this nightclub to go check out this sister act, which was Rosemary Clooney and Vera Ellen. And they perform this song, Sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're wearing these beautiful blue dresses, these feathered fans. It was a great number. Well, at one point they got to stall the police.
Right.
Bing and Danny do. And so they decide to lip sync this song. They roll up their pants. They've gotten rid of their jacket pockets. They got these little headband things on, and they got the fans, and they're lip syncing this. And near the end, Danny Kaye just starts hitting Bing Crosby with the fan, and Bing can't not laugh. He is absolutely cracking up during doing this as they lip sync this female duet. And it's just so much fun. It's so funny. It was just fantastic. So many of the songs in that also are stuck in my head besides Sisters.
The best thing happen while you're dancing.
Danny Kaye, he is one of those old classic physical comedy actors. Because at one point he's got to convince his general that he fell down the steps and hurt his leg. And just that whole bit where he's trying to, maybe if we go slower as we walk around, and just everything about his performance was fantastic. So yeah, for me, it's every year I've got to watch it.
I can picture
And
Danny Kaye with the wavy sort of blondish hair, and then the
reddish.
it was like a reddish blondish. You know what I'm saying? Like it kind of had the sort of waves to it, ripples to it, and then the kind of blue suit at times. Like yeah, he's I don't know. I don't know in the realm of classic actors. I don't know how iconic his face or features are, but to me, I always picture him in that film, of course, and I could spot him out of a lineup immediately because of that movie.
It's just it's a fun movie, but honestly, there's not a lot about Christmas of it other than the time of year it happens and the song. Outside of that, there's not a lot of to do with Christmas. There's not Santa Claus in it, other than them dressing up kind of as Santa Claus in the final number. There's no Santa Claus. There's no magic. There's no mystery type stuff. There's no reindeers. There's none of that. And yet it's still such a great classic to watch at Christmas season.
I don't think it's a debate. I mean, it's literally in the title, and the whole goal is to ultimately get to where they need to get to perform. So, people can play games all they want and try to use that as fodder to argue about Die Hard, but we are not talking about Die Hard. That is the rule in this video.
Now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying my three are the top three Christmas films of all time. They're the most important to me. Maybe you could say the same, Adam, but regardless, I would say that for anyone watching this, I would love to know what yours are. I could give you a million runners up. I could tell you, like Adam said, in 2022, 2023, 2024, I'll probably rotate some things. It'll probably...
There are going to be plenty of people who are going to be upset that A Christmas Story wasn't in one of our top three. Christmas Vacation was not in our top three. You know, there's going to be plenty that are going to be like, how are these movies not? The fact that, you did an honorable mention of It's a Wonderful Life, but it wasn't in one of our top threes. So, it's definitely, we'll get some good comments of what other people think are their favorites. My brother is probably Bad Santa and A Christmas Story and Christmas Vacation are probably his top three.
Yeah, and that's a very good top three. I mean, Bad Santa's just cathartic. It's all about just letting out all the negativity that you need for the holiday season. Anyone should consider that a top 10. I will say that. I'm going to just say that right now. That should be a top 10 for anybody. It needs to be, in fact.
And there are other movies I watch every year. The Ref with Dennis Leary and Kevin Spacey is another movie I watch every year. I think it's a great kind of darker Christmas movie as well.
If you don't mind, the corpse still has the floor.
There are plenty of movies Christmas season I watch every year. I can't say that the Harold and Kumar Christmas movie is in my list of I have to watch it every year, but it's got some fun moments.
You better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why.
Of all things, like why? Like there are so many movies we haven't even talked about, like Elf. Like let's just say you didn't.
Well, I don't like Elf, so that
You're feeling strong, my friend. Call me Elf one more time.
He's an angry elf.
Adam, why are you? I cannot do a Elf. What's wrong with you, Adam?
I don't like Elf.
I can't go down that path. That is a absolute classic. It needs to be in anyone's lineup, or at least, that is a.
There are lots of great Christmas films to enjoy this time of year. So whatever does it for you, and gets you in the holiday spirit, then that's all that really matters. We're giving you our three that are in our tops that we love enjoying every year, but you do you and enjoy whatever it is that brings joy and Christmas spirit and helps embody this holiday season the most for you. Even if it's a bad Christmas movie and you enjoy it, that's all that really matters. So in this holiday season, I think the best thing we can say is, enjoy your Christmas, happy holidays. And, we look forward to doing more videos and everything in the new year. So this is Adam and Andrew with It Takes Two Takes. Yes, but in Elf, Neil Patrick Harris doesn't cock block Jesus.
I get
Just
it.
saying.
That's all fine, but that doesn't. This whole video's ruined, Adam. What is wrong with you?
What? Because I said I didn't like Elf. I'm not the first person I
I
met.
don't like Elf. It was like we don't talk about Elf in this household.